Kia ora, ni hao, and hello. Welcome to the Chiwi Journal podcast. I'm your host, Camille Yang. My guest today is Richard Reis. He's a co-founder of Most Recommended Books, a voracious reader and a blogger. Richard also enjoys finance and building stuff. In today's episode, we discussed Richard's Zen Meditation experience, Most Recommended Books, Competitiveness, and how to know yourself. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to reality, Richard. I heard about you have been doing a 3-month meditation retreat. Would you mind sharing what's the program look like and what have you learned from this?
Yeah, I started doing this retreat. It was 3 months and a week ago, so I'm staying an extra month.
Oh, okay.
And it's a Mountain Cloud Zen Center. And I found out about it through, there were two podcasts. There was the Sam Harris podcast and there was the Kevin Rose podcast. And they both more or less at the same time interviewed the same guy. His name was Henry Schuckman. Mm-hmm. And I found the interview super interesting. And I had always wanted to try Zen meditation. So like I had tried different types of meditation before. Like transcendental meditation and mindfulness-based meditation, but I had never tried Zen, and I was always very curious about Zen. So I found out about this teacher who lived right here, because originally I wanted to learn Zen by traveling to Japan. I was going to do it last year, and then COVID happened. It didn't happen. So I found out about this guy who lives here, and he has a center here. And as soon as I heard the interviews, I was sold. And now I've been here for 3 months and a week.
So why Zen meditation? What's the difference between Zen meditation and other type of meditation?
There are a few reasons. There's like an aesthetic I like about Zen, but if I had to sum it up, I would say Zen combines like the things I like the most from different types of meditation. So like broadly speaking, there are like two different types of meditation. One is broad awareness. You know, you're sensing your breath, you're sensing body sensations.
It's a mindful meditation.
Yeah, exactly. That's the mindfulness. And then there's a transcendental meditation, which is focus, which is like they give you a mantra.
Yeah.
And you just focus on the mantra. Zen kind of combines both in a way. They have a bit like if I were to say, like a video game where they focus on, you have to get to this level. They call it joriki, which is like the level of concentration where you focus on body sensations, you focus on sounds, you focus on whatever is around you. And then once you have reached that power of concentration, the teacher will give you what's called a koan, which functions very much like a mantra in transcendental meditation. And the goal of the koan is to reach these other experiences that, you know, are very common in many meditation traditions. But I like that Zen combines both, you know, instead of just one. So I was very interested in that. And then I started seeing Zen everywhere. I read Steve Jobs' biography, and he was into Zen. I realized that Mark Benioff, who created Salesforce, changed his profile picture on Twitter to a Zen, him in a Zen center. You know, so I started seeing it all over. Like I saw the Kevin Rose interview, so I was like, okay, there's something here, and all these people are into it. Let me go check it out, and that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, Zen is calling you.
I know. It's like all of a sudden, it's everywhere. So,
So what's your daily routine like when you're doing this program?
Yeah, it's quite simple. Like you wake up at, so I wake up at 6:30. There's a meditation from 7 till 8. And then
it's a group meditation or just yourself?
No, group meditation. And then there's another meditation from 5:30 till 6:30. And then once a month they have a 4-day, which you know about, the 4-day silent retreat, which is no talking, no reading, no anything, just you and your mind, and meditating about 3 to 4 hours a day or more, you know, 3 at least, and then more if you want, and then talks with the teachers and all that. So that's pretty much the program in a nutshell.
Do you have a fear of missing out while on the 4-day silent retreat? Were you like anxious about what's going on outside the meditation center?
Well, when you run a startup, that's always you know, that's one thing. But no, like because I know that the 4 days are coming, I always make sure that, my team knows about it and that we're prepared and
Mhm.
everything is set up. It's harder to do the 4 days where it's complete silence, so you can't talk to anyone and you can't read, which is what kills me.
Yeah.
If you could at least read, it would be easy for me, but you can't do that, and it's just supposed to be you and your mind. So that is way tougher for me than the fear of missing out, because it's only 4 days, right? So
Yeah. Can you write
nope,
or no?
nothing.
Oh
Yeah,
wow. So basically just yourself.
yeah, but it has this calming effect. So at the end of the day, I always experience this very broad awareness. The day is really tough for me, because it's like a lot of meditation and no activity, nothing. So it's really hard for me, and I'm like counting the seconds for the day to be over. But as soon as the day is over, and like I lay in bed after a full day of silence, you get this broad awareness and perspective, and it just makes everything so clear in your head. So like when running my startup during those 4 days, I sometimes see things where in my day to day, I don't see it. But then those 4 days of silence, suddenly everything just becomes clear. And you're like, oh, wow, like I never noticed this, but it's so obvious right now. And then you get some pretty cool experiences during those 4 days, like some interesting, almost psychedelic like experiences. So that's pretty cool.
Wow. Can you tell me some more details about the experience you
Yeah,
got?
it's hard to describe. Like it's kind of like I see this with people who have tried psychedelics, how hard it is to describe the actual
Yeah.
experience. It's the same with
Mm-hmm.
this, where this last retreat, while I was sitting and meditating, something just happened. Something just clicked, where it suddenly felt like I looked up at the window and I saw a cloud, and it suddenly felt like, how do I put this? You know how like on the day to day you feel like you're inside your
Mm-hmm.
mind, and then
Yeah.
you hear sounds or you
I
see
see.
things
Yeah.
in the distance. Suddenly, it didn't feel like I was inside my mind anymore. It felt like I was this consciousness, and it was just let's call it awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all there was. And everything was happening inside of my awareness. So the cloud was inside my awareness. The sounds were inside my awareness. It didn't feel like it was me looking at things outside anymore. It felt like I was this broad awareness, and everything was inside of it. So you kind of feel like, yeah,
Oneness. Yeah. Emerged with the universe, with your
yeah.
surrounding.
They have a lot of that in Zen, where it's like oneness and emptiness,
Uh-huh.
and everything is empty, but everything is one. It's
Yes.
kind of paradoxical, but these experiences are quite common
Mm-hmm.
in the Zen tradition. So that was an interesting thing that happened. And I don't know if you've read the book 10% Happier by
No.
this guy Dan Harris.
Heard about it.
He does
Haven't
a
read it yet. Yeah.
That's a fun book. If you really want to start with meditation, like that's a fun book to begin, because he came at it from a very skeptical perspective. Like he was a super skeptical guy, and he discovers meditation, and he tries his first 10-day retreat, and somewhere in the middle of that retreat, he just experienced this crazy psychedelic, like, super skeptical guy, which is good, because like a lot of times when you read these Dharma books or meditation books, it's it can quickly delve into woo woo. It's like suddenly they're talking about
True.
energies and spirits and whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I like when I start a book that was written by a skeptic, and Dan Harris definitely fits that mold. And the fact that that's how he begins the book, and by the middle of the book, he's experiencing this. He called it the best high in his
Oh
life.
wow.
Yeah. So if you want to understand more about those experiences, I highly recommend that book. He explains it far better than I could.
Yeah. Before you join this program, do you have any goals you want to achieve, like achieving enlightenment or epiphany, this
I don't
kind
know
of
about
thing?
enlightenment, but no, I wanted the focus for sure, because that's one area that I wanted to work on most, was my focus. So that's where I started. But there's also, I was interested in the intuition side of things. So about 2 years ago, I started this program called Lambda School, where they teach you how to code in 6 months. During the program, I read this book called A Mind for Numbers by Barbara Oakley, I believe is her name. And in the book, she talked about something very interesting, which was using your intuition to solve problems. So you struggle with a problem, it's like you've probably experienced this in school or whatever, if you did math, where you have a math problem or any type of school problem, and you're trying to solve it, you're trying to come up with the solution,
Yeah.
can't find it. Suddenly you go for a walk, or you take a nap, or whatever, and suddenly the solution just appears.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was fascinated by that, because while I was learning how to code, I read that book and I was trying that. I was like, okay, let's see this. So I remember having these experiences where I'm struggling with a problem and I'm trying to solve it at the whiteboard, and the solution just won't come. But then I vividly remember the first time it happened. I went to a walk. I walked to Trader Joe's, and the solution just appeared. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I thought, how can I cultivate this? How can I use this newfound superpower more? And so I read Ray Dalio's book Principles, and he talks about that. He talks about meditation being his avenue towards achieving that state of intuitive problem solving. And then Steve Jobs was the same thing. He believed that intuition was his superpower, and he cultivated it in many ways. He tried a bunch of drugs, he meditated quite a bit. He followed gurus and all this stuff because he wanted to develop the power of his intuition. So I was like, okay, all these people are kind of hinting at the same thing. So I thought, in order for me to find out more about it, let me join a 3-month meditation course and see how it goes.
Yeah, Ray Dalio was a guy brought me to the meditation, because after I read the principle, I joined the Transcendental Meditation program.
Right, same. Yeah.
And also, I think you shared with me a quote from Steve Jobs about the mud water. You need to let the mud sink to the bottom, then you can see the clear water. Is it?
Yeah. I don't know if that was Jobs, or I think it was from Tim Ferriss. And I think about that a lot when meditating. It feels like your mind, you're in the choppy waters, and then when you meditate, it feels like you're sinking to the bottom. And the more you sink, the calmer things get. And when you reach the floor of, let's say, the ocean, then things just become so much clearer. The power of just quieting your mind is quite interesting to me, and that's something that I try to learn more about, and it helps with business. Some of the best ideas I've had for most recommended books have come from just a place of stillness.
So speaking of most recommended books, you are one of the founder of that website.
Yep.
What motivates you to build this website, and what problem are you thinking to solve?
Originally, it was just a fun thing that I started with one of my best friends, Anurag, who's also one of the best programmers I know.
Oh, wow.
We would talk before about starting something together. 3 years ago, we decided to give it a try, to let's just build something together. But we had one rule, which was, we'll try something, and if it doesn't work within 30 days, then we'll just kill it, try something else. So don't get romantic about any idea. Just try until something hits, right? And this well, because I got that idea from Derek Sivers.
Yeah.
So I knew you would know. So that's who I got the idea from. Yeah. I also got the idea from the Facebook effect. So the book on Mark Zuckerberg, it said how he started dozens of projects at Harvard until he hit one that worked well, which is Facebook. And even after he hit Facebook, he was still trying other stuff. He tried this, I forgot what the name was. It was Hug something. It was another project after Facebook, because he thought this Facebook thing wasn't going to work, but Facebook was already growing. Yeah. So this guy was just trying a bunch of things. So I was like, let's just follow the same formula. So we tried a project. After 30 days, there was no real traction, so we got rid of it. Another project, no traction. And then Most Recommended Books. And within the first week, Most Recommended Books was already making money, and people were sharing it. So I was like, okay, that was a Derek Sivers thing, right? So I thought this is interesting, and what will happen if we just focus 100% on this. So that's what we've been doing for the last almost 2 years. It's almost been 2 years of MRB. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember Tim Ferriss recommend this website on his newsletter.
Yeah.
That's how we met each
Yes.
other. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I read it because it's so good. 'Cause I'm a blogger, so a lot of my readers ask me, "Oh, which book do you recommend?" So,
I know. I always see your name on my website. Like I always see people visiting your page
oh
because we
wow,
have your recommended books. So sometimes I check analytics and I'm like, oh, people are visiting her page. Yeah, all the time. So
oh, that's good.
so that's
Yeah, that's nice.
So for sure.
So what's the long-term plan for this website?
It's a bit of a training ground because we didn't want to raise any money for this because it's not venture backed type of startup. I still believe Anurag and I have a venture backed startup idea in us that we'd like to work on later, but for now I think Most Recommended Books is teaching me all the motions of running a startup. Like it's I'm learning about finance, I'm learning about law, I'm learning about talking to users, I'm learning about design, learning about SEO. So the idea of Most Recommended Books is really to you know this. Have you read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
He talks about the concept of the muse. So that's Most Recommended Books. It's like something that is just out there and makes enough money to pay for our lifestyles, while we can work on other things. So really the idea with Most Recommended Books is to give us, not just that, but also give us the experience of running something, that teaches you lessons in law and finance and design, and so through this I'm learning all the basics of running a startup, and that's really the idea with MRB, which is why we haven't raised any money, which is why we're just like there. But the cool thing is, like, we are profitable and we are growing, and all this stuff comes from trying, a whole bunch of different things. So that's what it's helping us with.
Yeah. What's the most common theme in the most recommended books? What genres and what's the top 3 books people recommend?
Oh, I have that list. I have that list. There's a lot of biographies.
Oh, okay.
A lot of biographies, history books. Like the top 3 books, 2 of them are history-ish, right? So you have Man's Search for Meaning.
Sapiens, yeah.
Yeah, so Sapiens, which is a history book, and then Man's Search for Meaning, which is a biography-ish, book. So those are the top 2 most recommended of all time. And then you have Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week. So there is quite a bit of those types of more or less self-help books.
Oh, quite diverse. Yeah.
But usually biographies are that's what I see quite often.
Blame Tim Ferriss. I used to work very comfortably in a corporate world. After reading his book, quit my job, travel around the world, start my own business. Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, just jump out of my comfort zone. Yeah, but I do feel the fulfillment.
You'll definitely do that.
Yeah, my life is much happier than before, although it's not comfortable. Yeah.
Amazing. Oh, he'd love to. That's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, that book. Yeah, 4-Hour Work Week was is the 3rd most popular.
I see.
It's and you'll find it always on like the Amazon bestsellers list. It's always somewhere there. So it's a really big book and well done, and it inspired Most Recommended Books, right? So it's it's effective. I had seen other people that I follow who were influenced by that book. So like the guy who started Quest. Do you know
okay,
Quest?
yeah, I know Quest. Yeah,
I forgot his name. I just blanked on it. Tom Bilyeu. So like a 4-Hour Work Week influenced him. So these people that I follow had the Tim Ferriss effect has touched a lot of lives. So that book is definitely in the top 3. And yeah, a lot of history, a lot of that type of books.
So when you running your own business, do you have any self-doubt? Being a startup founder can be very tough, especially when you're a first-time startup founder. Have you encountered any challenges that trigger you have self-doubt, and how do you overcome that?
You definitely encounter challenge. You always will, right? So it's you're always gonna. But I feel like the self-doubt thing. Of course, you have that. Everyone says like running a business is super hard, and it's super hard. But I think the super hard part is the the human side of it, like your doubt, your fears, you always go to the worst case scenario. You're always drifting between either euphoria or dreadery. Like it's there's no in between. Like you're either like best day ever or worst day ever. And I find that's the hardest part of the startup, because the basics of it, I always find the more machine like you become, the more objective you become, the easier the problems in the startup become. Because it's like, if you really think about it, the basic goal of a startup or a business is to make money, right? You just want to make more than you're spending, and that's it, and then you want to grow that. That's it, right? That's like super
simple. Yeah, first principle.
right. And so, but then when you're going through it, you're like, oh my God, what about the fears? Why did I quit my job? Why did I do, what if we don't make more? You go through this very human fear. And I find that that's the hardest part, is like managing yourself is the hardest part for me, because the problems that I encounter with most recommended books, if I write them down on paper or I try to be objective, they become easier to solve, right? It's like, I'm worrying about this. I'm worrying about this. And then it's like, wait, what's the problem? Okay, like this thing, this is costing more money than I was expecting. How? Then the question becomes, how can I make it cost less?
Yeah.
How can I make more to pay for this? So it becomes very simple when you put it in an objective way. And this goes back to the meditation, where the meditation will just calm down your crazy mind.
Anxiety.
And if you were like a computer, like an algorithm, it becomes very obvious, it becomes much simpler to solve the problems. And then it's like you have to work 24/7, right? You have to work all the time. That if I remind myself to do both those things, like constantly be objective and work super hard, things are generally fine, but if I let go, and if my mind takes over, then the fears start appearing, and it doesn't really help. Sometimes it helps, the fear just shows you that something has to change, but most of the time it's like, once you thought about the problem once, and then you try to think about a solution, that should be it. But if you're repeating the problem over and over and over and over, and the fears keep repeating, then it becomes like, that to me is the hardest part about running a business. It's your own mind.
Do you have a system or daily routine to support you?
Well, right now I'm meditating 2 hours a day.
Yes.
But also like the constant reminder to be objective, and the meditation helps with that, because none of this is rocket science, right? It's like, just make more money than you spend and grow it. And it's not something that's super complex. It's not easy, right? It's hard, but it's not an impossible, you're not breaking any laws of physics. So you just have to remind yourself to constantly be objective, and meditating helps with that. Reminding myself, like put it as your phone screen or something, like be objective, like whatever it is to remind you of that. That's more or less my daily routine. And working out, right? Because it's like, after running, my mind just calms down.
I say, so, it's helped. Yeah. It reminds me about Ray Dalio's approach, because he kind of regards himself as a machine. So he tried not to get emotion dominate his work. I think it's very helpful.
My worst decisions were emotional, fear-based. It's like, oh my God, like this competitor is doing this. Let's quickly do something, and then you make a mistake, right? So those have been my worst decisions, and my best decisions have always been from a place of, a higher level of, this is what's happening. This is what we want to make happen. How do we get there? And then you try something, it doesn't work, try something else, doesn't work, but eventually you get there. And that's, the calmer I am, the better it is for the business.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned Larry Ellison is one of your big heroes. So what traits of him that appeal to you?
When you look at the Silicon Valley founders, right, like the Mount Rushmore, you have Gates, you have Jobs, you have Larry Page and Zuck. And these guys are very different from me. The way they speak and the way they act is very different from the way, like Jobs is very much about changing the world, making the world a better place, building great products. And then you have Gates, who Gates is a very like technical, he's been coding since he was born. Same thing for Zuck, so I couldn't relate too much to these guys because my personality is much more competitive and openly competitive. Like, I'll talk about my competitors, on social media, and so I was like, when I first came to Silicon Valley, I was like, man, maybe I shouldn't do a tech business because I'm nothing like these guys,
I see.
But then I discover Larry Ellison, and I discover Travis Kalanick, and I discover Mark Cuban, and I'm like, okay, these are people that I can, because I'm a competitive guy. Like I was a competitive swimmer. I used to swim,
Oh wow.
and
Yeah.
and I used to play chess. So I've always loved competition. And then I find these guys who are also super competitive, So Larry Ellison is just one that I really connected with because his, he was like Steve Jobs' best friend. He was the longest running CEO in Silicon Valley. He's openly competitive, which I love. It's his personality is something that he's also funny.
Yes.
He's not your typical tech founder, and that's something that I loved. It's like something that I really attached myself to because I was like, okay, here's someone who talks the way I talk and who acts the way I and so
Like a role model.
it kind of it kind of became someone where I'm like, okay, if he runs a tech business, that means that if there was no Ellison, I would be like, maybe tech is not for me, because none of these guys are like me. But because there is an Ellison, I'm like, okay, cool. So I do belong here, and so I've read all his biographies and all that stuff. Like his philosophies are very much similar to mine. So and he has a fascinating story, like being best friends with Steve Jobs for over 2 decades is just super interesting to me.
Yeah, I listened to the 3 episode you recommend me from the founder's podcast, Personal Story. I haven't read all his biography yet, but it's on my list.
That's funny because I actually told David, who created the Founders Podcast, I sent him one of the Larry Ellison books and I said, you should read this for the podcast. And he read it and he liked it so much that he ended up reading, there's only like 3 biographies on Ellison. So he ended up reading all 3 of them for his podcast. Yeah, because he just became a fan, like this guy is a super interesting guy and very complex, so that makes it even more interesting for me.
Yeah. So where does your competitiveness come from? Have you ever thought about that?
This is like a therapy session. It came from. I know where it came from, right? 2 places. One, like I was bullied in school a lot because growing up, every 3 years we'd change schools because my mom traveled a lot. There was moved around a lot, and always getting to a new school, like the kids are not going to be very nice to you. So
Yeah.
that was one drive of my competitiveness. I always wanted to be better, so like when I started playing chess in school, I said I wanted to beat everyone, and I did. I became the captain of the chess team. And then when I started swimming, I was like, I want to be better than everyone, and I did. I was the best swimmer and definitely the top 3 in the south of Spain.
Oh wow.
And the top 2 guys were Olympic swimmers.
Wow.
So I just there was this chip on my shoulder, right, where I just wanted to. And the second one is my father, who he's a successful businessman, but as a father, he was always very critical of everything that I do. Every time I would do something that I would find pretty cool, he would always, oh, that's not enough, that's not good enough, that's never good.
It's quite like Larry Ellison's father.
Yeah, that's another reason I connected with Ellison, right? It's like we both had interesting fathers. When I started my blog, when I started my Medium blog, I was like, oh my God, Dad, like I have whatever it was, like I have 5 followers or 5 likes in my last post. And he's like, that's nothing. Let me know when there's 100. And then I did 100. And he's like, that's nothing. Let me know when there's 1,000. One of my blog posts, How to Think Like a Programmer, became top 10 Medium all time.
Yeah,
it was one of the top 10 Medium blog posts of all time. And I think to this day, it's still the most popular free code camp post. And
Cool.
Free Code Camp is like this huge publication. My dad was like, okay, but these blogs don't make any money, so let me know when you're. So then I start most recommended books, and now it's making money. So it's like he's constantly, no matter what I do, it's never ever good enough, right? So that's another.
Satisfied. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. But like those two things have driven me. So I took the, I don't know if I would raise my kids that way, but it worked for me, right? It's like it definitely made me more competitive and definitely focus on achieving things.
Yeah, you mentioned that you move around a lot, so you can speak multiple languages.
Yeah,
And
like you.
I can only speak 3, probably 2.5. Yeah,
Mine's
yeah.
4, so it's only one more than you.
I find it very interesting when I speak different languages. My personality changed.
Oh yeah, same.
And you also found this one, yeah. Can you give me an example, like when you speak Spanish or Portuguese, what it's like?
It's funny. I don't know if you noticed this too. Like people are also different when you speak. So like if I'm in talking to someone in English, but it turns out their first language is Spanish, and I'm like, oh, I speak Spanish. Suddenly they change as well. They're like nicer, It's you automatically connect with the person if you both speak the same language, especially if it's their first language, And my personality changes. Yeah, it's funny that is true. Where like my Portuguese is much softer because I speak to my family. I only speak to my family in Portuguese, so I'm much like softer. My English is the one that I'm most comfortable with, right? Because I've lived here for 10 years now, and I studied in English schools. So and I like reading in English. I like doing everything in English because that's the universal language, right? If you have English, you don't really need the other languages, at least for me. So that's the one that I put the most work into is my English. So I feel like my English version is me, and then my other versions are like, I speak Portuguese with my family, so you'll see my family side, and Spanish and French with friends, so you see like a more friendly version. But there's definitely a change in personality that comes with it. And that.
Yeah, very interesting in this. I grew up like speaking Chinese and read a lot of Chinese books. I find it's easier for me to read Chinese and learn. But when I read English, reading speed just dropped dramatically, and I need to read a couple of times to learn.
Yeah, the same happened to me. I remember going through that and then just forcing myself to watch movies in English with the subtitles so that if they say something I know. And music was a big a big help because especially hip hop, where like I would listen to something, I have no idea what they just said, and then trying to memorize the lyrics was a huge boost in my English. But I remember going through that, like, because I was more comfortable with French, but then I was like, you know what, like English is a more popular language and more people speak it, so I should probably focus more on this. And I think it was the right decision, especially because there's like interesting books that come out, and they mostly come out in English, or if they become bestsellers in another country, if like Three Body Problem is a good example, right? It becomes a bestseller in China, and then they translate it to English, right? So if it becomes a bestseller somewhere else, it's going to be translated to English, right? Whereas there are books where I want to share with my mom, but they don't have the Portuguese version, So I think like English, that was the right language to focus on, even though French was my most comfortable one for a while.
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's why I switch my podcast into English and switch my blog into English as well.
If I were to start again, I would like see the list of the most popular languages in the world. English and Chinese are like the top 2, and then I would just focus on like the top 4 or 5. Just memorize the top 4 or 5, and you can try. So you have 2 out of the top 4 or 5. So that's really good.
Yeah, Chinese is so hard to learn. I would say. Yeah. I was so lucky to born in China to learn it.
I trust me. I lived in Beijing for 2 months or more. And it was very difficult to learn and very easy to forget.
If you don't practice, you just forget.
It just disappeared completely. I still know a few like I still know a few basics, but it's different from like I know Portuguese and Spanish, and if you know one, learning the other becomes
Oh, is
much
it
easier.
easy?
Yeah, same with
Oh, I
Italian.
see.
So it's like those three languages are so similar where even if I forget some Spanish, I can always like try a Portuguese word and 9 times out of 10 it's gonna work. Whereas with Chinese, there's like nothing for me to hang on to. So that was a wabujidao.
Yeah,
That's
that's good. Yeah.
that was
Yeah. But I don't know if you read Ted Chiang, his book, A Story of Your Life.
Oh
It
yeah.
is turned this book into Arrival, the
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. It's a bunch of sci-fi stories, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he mentioned the languages can change your thinking. Like
Hmm.
in the
Oh
story,
yeah,
yeah,
Arrival.
yeah, Rebel,
Yeah.
yeah. So once you master that language, you probably can see the world in a different perspective. Yeah, that's how I fascinated with people who can speak different languages. I'm very interested in their mind. They probably see the world very different from people who can only speak one language.
Yeah, there's definitely like something interesting that happens when you have a word for a thing, but then the word doesn't exist. And like
Mm,
in Portuguese, we have what I think is the most beautiful word, which is saudade.
saudade.
Yeah, which there is no English word to replicate that word, but it means like you miss something, like to miss something. It's a very beautiful,
Uh-huh.
poignant word, but they don't have a same that exact word for English or Spanish or French. So that's interesting, right? Where I have this concept in my mind, but I cannot express it in the same way. So I find that interesting. And you've shown me some words in Chinese.
Huh?
I
I forgot.
forgot. Yeah, I know. I forgot. You showed me one word that I found super interesting. I don't know if it was like
Ah.
competitive or something like that. It was like I forgot what it was, but you showed me something
Oh,
that I found
okay.
interesting. It was a while ago, so but they don't have that word in English. See, so that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Sometimes when I write article in English, it's just I need to like doing translation or yeah, it's
Oh
pretty
yeah,
hard. Yeah.
yeah, that's a tough one.
So when you move around, you make a lot of friends from different culture backgrounds. How do you know who is your community? Because when you travel around or move around, you probably lost touch with your old friends. Will you feel lonely or would that bother you? Because for me, I moved from China to New Zealand and to the UK, but especially during the COVID, I feel I don't have a solid offline community to support me. I know it's important, but yeah, it's just hard. I don't know if from your own background, do you have this loneliness or nobody quite knows you, this kind of feeling?
Definitely, I do see myself as a pretty solitary person, but it's kind of by design because when I moved, it was every 3 years from since I was born.
That's
From since I
insane.
was born. So there's no, I don't have
Wow.
I see friends who like they have a friend that they've known since they were kids or since high school. These are high school friends. I don't have that. I don't have someone or a group of people that I've known my whole life, right? Because every 3 years it changes, right? So it already made for a pretty lonely. Like high school was not fun for me ever,
Mm,
but nowadays I feel like though I'm still a pretty solitary person, especially like starting a startup, right? You want your startup to go well. Here's how you do it: you have no love life, no social life, no family life, and your startup will do well. And I'm pretty good at applying that lesson. But I do have a very tight group of friends. Like I could count on one, maybe two hands, my real friends. Like my roommate, like he's my best friend. My co-founder is one of my best friends. But
yeah.
there's only like five of these people. It's very very a very small number, but it is a tight number. But these aren't people that I've known my whole life. The oldest I've probably known for maybe 8 years, 8 to 10 years. So and I'm almost 30. So there's that. But you mentioned the community thing, right? And there's nothing online, and that is something that I found was important. When I did the Lambda thing or the
Yeah,
coding
the
boot
coding,
camp,
yeah.
I spent 6 months without seeing any other person. I had a girlfriend at the time, so like she would come visit, but that was it. For 6 months, I wouldn't see a single soul, and I was
Wow.
just locked in my apartment studying programming, right? And I was like, why am I so miserable? Why am I so sad? And I had no idea. I was totally, because in my mind I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus. I'm going to be a robot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be
Yeah.
the best programmer. And suddenly I was like, man, why am I so sad? Like, and I was gaining weight. I was like, what is going on here? And then I actually a recommendation from Ferriss, like from Tim Ferriss, was he recommended in either in his newsletter or his podcast, was this book called
Oh, yeah. I
by
think I read that before. Yeah. Yeah.
Tribe by Sebastian Junger, which
Yeah.
is one of my favorite books. It's like a really short book. You can read it in a day, but it really, after reading that book, I was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. It's so obvious why I'm feeling down. It's like I need I was living by myself, so I haven't lived by
Yeah.
myself
Oh,
since I
wow.
read that book. That was a mistake. Like being by myself, even though it increases productivity over the short term, over the long term, productivity will decrease because you're constantly sad and you don't know why. So, and that book kind of
So,
talks about times in human history where people were going through a really tough moment, but they missed those times. So, like, why do soldiers, come back and they miss the war? Or one of the examples in the book was like during the Blitzkrieg in London when they were getting bombarded by the Germans. People would hide in tunnels and underground, and it was like some people miss those days, and it's like, why do you miss those days? Are you crazy? Like, and he interviewed one woman in the book, and her answer to that question was because during those days we were always together, and
yeah,
we would sit around a
togetherness.
fire
Yeah.
and we would sing and we would laugh and we would, even though we were getting
Yeah.
bombarded by this Hitler guy, like we were happier because we were all suffering together. So I was like, oh my God. So that's the thing. Like, if you want to be happy, even during tough times, you need this community. And it's worked fantastically for me, right? So I haven't lived alone since.
Yeah.
And now that I'm doing the meditation retreat, there's a community here,
Oh,
so
that's great.
I've done my best never to be alone. And I never want to do that again, so that's what.
Yeah, oh, that's good advice. Yeah, I should do that
Yeah.
because I found out that all my friends are online
Uh,
friends now. Yeah, I hardly have any offline
yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
It
yeah,
was
I
tough for
don't
me
know.
for 6 months. It was like for 6 months I
Hmm.
was like really down. And I've always been a pretty solitary guy, but
Yeah.
there's a difference between
Uh-huh.
being solitary and seeing your friends every now and then and just being completely not seeing a single soul for six. Like that was so. I was like, okay, I am
Unbelievable.
solitary, but not as much as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to talk about the personality test. Is that the the way you know yourself, or do you have any other ways to help you know better about yourself? What's your desire and what do you want to achieve?
Well, you know this. It came from Ray Dalio.
Oh, he created the personality
Did you take it?
test. Yeah, I
I took
think
it.
what am I? I can't inventor.
Yeah, that I took that test. I took the Big Five.
Uh-huh.
I took the Enneagram. Because it's like there are tests and tests, right? Like some of these tests are apparently not super. None of them are 100% accurate, right? But some are more accurate than others. So if on one side you have astrology, like super not accurate, I would guess. On the other side, the most accurate we have would be the Big Five.
Oh, okay.
At least according to whatever I've read online. So I took the Big Five. I took the Dalio test, I took the Enneagram, and they all kind of, because you take one
Yeah.
test and it's not accurate. It's not 100% accurate, but it's somewhat accurate. But then if one test says you're competitive and then another test says you're competitive and then the other test says, chances are, you know, so
Yeah.
that's why I took those three. And I tried to focus on what are my strengths. So one thing that I discovered through most recommended books and then through the tests was
Mm.
what drives me the most. And that was really important for my business, which was when I'm starting most recommended books, one of the things that I'm reading constantly on in blogs and online is that advice that which is focus on your customers, not on your competitors. So I tried that, but it didn't work for me. So, so I was like,
Yeah.
everyone's telling me focus on customers, not competitors, but it didn't work for most recommended books. And then once I started focusing on competitors and I created like this leaderboard of like who's winning, that's when most recommended books really started doing well.
Oh, wow.
So knowing myself and knowing that I am competitive, and then it made sense when I looked at my story, right? I told you about the swimming, I told you about playing chess, I told you about like my blog. Every time I have a clear objective or clear person, like this is who we want to beat, that's when I perform my best, and the test just helped make it clearer for me, because it's like it's very hard to know yourself, unless other people tell you, or these tests, right? What something I found interesting about Ray Dalio with these tests was when he compared it to like a CV, a person's curriculum vitae. Like if you're going to hire someone and you read their CV, they're just going to write the best things about them, right? It's like, I'm great, I'm great, I'm
Exactly,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, every CV looks the same. They all look great. But if you give them these personality tests and you kind of triangulate different tests, you can get a much better picture of the person than just by reading their CV, And so I found that super interesting. So now, like, all my friends have taken the tests,
Yeah.
So I said it to like everyone. So that's something that I found interesting. The only issue with the test is how accurate they are. None of them are 100% accurate. So you
Yeah,
kind of have
true. You need to do a multiple.
I would take it with a grain of salt, because even at Bridgewater, like you take the test and they give you this card. They say like, Camellia, she's competitive, she's creative, she's whatever. But then you're constantly also getting scored. They have this thing where people will say, well, she wasn't very reliable in this area, or she did great in this area. So they give you the card, but they're also constantly changing, because people change, right? If you want to be more creative, taking an art class for 6 months is probably going to help, so you're constantly changing. So I found that interesting as well, but it gives you a clearer picture of a person than any other option. It's not 100%, but I can think of a better option than that.
Do you think meditation also help you to know yourself better, so you have a time to reflect on yourself?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're constantly not when I was meditating before, but like during these 3 months, and talking to a meditation teacher really helps. Yeah, that's something I like about Zen. This is why I couldn't learn Zen through an app. All the other meditation practices I learned through an, except TM, right? TM, you also have to be given a mantra.
Yeah.
But with Zen, it has to be a teacher, and every week you meet with the teacher and they ask you questions. So
Okay.
through that, I got to know myself. He would ask questions that I didn't even think about. So and then he would tell me, pay attention to that, and I would sit down and meditate, and it's like the same thing over and over again happening over, and I'm like, wow, I've been thinking about the same thing for 3-4 days in a row, and I'm just replaying the same scene in my head over and over, and that's interesting, because now you see a side of yourself that you normally don't pay attention to, but then it just becomes obvious. And I'll end with this. There's a cool book called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I think it's one of the top books on MRB. But The Untethered Soul, he talks about like some people call this your monkey mind, right? Like this annoying person in your head that's constantly talking. In The Untethered Soul, he does something funny, which he says, like, give it a personality, make this person, like, give them, what does this person, a
Give
name,
it a
what do they
name.
look like,
Yeah.
and every
I
time you
see.
hear
Yeah.
yourself like, oh my God, that person caught me in traffic yesterday. It's like, oh, there's that annoying guy again talking, so you kind of get to know yourself better through studying this monkey mind of yours. It's like, why am I still thinking about the person who didn't want to go to prom with me in school? Like, why am I still like, where did that come from? So that meditation helps with that, and you kind of know yourself better through that.
I see. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So last question: what gets you most excited about the future?
This is something I really like the increase in knowledge. So, have you read David Deutsch's Beginning of Infinity?
Yeah, because they've all recommended it. Then
Yeah,
I read
that's
that. Yeah.
that is my favorite book, and that is the book that showed me that every problem can be solved with the right knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So that book really changed my mind, and it was great for most recommended books, and I still reread it all the time. It just he makes this really compelling argument that any problem that has happened, all evils have happened because of a lack of knowledge. So you think about the ancient Greeks dealing with the plague, before they knew about vaccines. But had they had the knowledge of vaccines, the plague wouldn't have affected them as much. So it's an interesting thing where now you start thinking about the world in terms of problems that just need more knowledge thrown at them. So like there is a cure for cancer, or cancers, the different types. We just don't know it yet. So we just need that knowledge. There is a cure for whatever financial problems the world is going through. We just don't know the solution yet.
Yeah.
But when you see like every problem that, unless you're trying to break the laws of physics, right? So you're not going to travel faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
But unless you're breaking the laws of physics, every other problem that you can think about can be solved if you just had the right knowledge. So then this affects everything for me, which is like, from a society perspective, all the problems that we're facing, we just need more knowledge thrown at these problems. But even from like an individual perspective, right? With most recommended books, it's like, I want to go from making this much money to that much money. The only reason I'm not there yet is because I don't know how to get there yet. So how do I get that knowledge? Let's hire someone who's like a growth hacker, or let's hire someone who's, so someone has the knowledge, so you kind of see all your problems as like lack of knowledge. Then what gets you excited is finding the knowledge. So I like things like AI, we're working on, because human knowledge is limited, right? So now we're bringing these machines to, and we're building these systems that can provide even more knowledge. And like now they're beating us at chess, they're beating us at Go. They're better than doctors at recognizing whether an image is an image of a tumor or not. So to me that's exciting, right? We're just bringing more knowledge into the world. To me is the most important thing. So that's what gets me excited.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, Richard. Have you finished your blog post about your meditation, Richard?
No.
Okay, I'll send my listeners later to once you finish
I'm
it.
staying here an extra month. Every time I think I finished it, it's like I learned something new.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, let me wait until I'm done with my retreat,
Yes.
and then I'll release it. Because every time I talk to my teacher, I'm like, that's a really good point. Let me go write it down. And so I'll just wait until I'm done with the retreat, and then I can release the blog post. But still working. I'll send it to you.
That's great. I can't wait to read. Yeah.
Thank you, Camila. Great talking to you.
Kia ora, ni hao, and hello. Welcome to the Chewy Journal podcast. I'm your host, Camila Yang. My guest today is Richard Reis. He's a co-founder of